Hey everyone, this is Kevin from thechesswebsite.com, and today we are in Game 11 of the 2016 World Chess Championship. Game number 10 was pretty intense. Magnus Carlsen finally getting that first victory he's been looking for in the tournament, tying things up going into game number 11. Now, both sides only have white one more time. Karjakin going to be playing the white pieces today in game number 11. Then we take a day off, and then Carlsen comes back, and in game 12 on November 28th is going to be playing the white pieces. So expecting big things from Karjakin. He almost felt the victory in his hands, knowing that 3 games away from being the champion. Did give up that win to Magnus Carlsen last game. This is his last shot, though, to really do something big. So I'm expecting big things from Karjakin if he does want to be champion. Decides to start out with pawn to e4. We've been seeing this throughout the tournament. Pawn to e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, pawn to a6, bishop back here to a4. So very similar to what we saw in game 2. Now, if you remember game 2, it was one of the shortest, and it was pretty uneventful. Karjakin played the white pieces in that game as well. Castle on the king side, bishop here to e7, pawn to d3. All of these moves are the exact same. Kind of odd, I think, to be playing this. Magnus Carlsen defended it extremely well in game 2, and he's just playing the same moves. They aren't taking very long for this opening so far. Pawn to d6, solidifying that pawn chain. Pawn to a3, castle on the king side for black. Knight to c3. And then the first change in variation actually comes from Magnus Carlsen. Karjakin is played identically to game number 2, but Magnus Carlsen decides to go ahead and play bishop to e6. If you remember from game number 2, there's kind of a couple ways to attack this bishop here on b3. You could play knight to a5, which is what he played in game number 2, or you could play bishop here to e6. Bishop to e6 is more of a let's just trade off all material on board. Knight to a5, in my opinion, is more of, okay, I'm going to keep my options open. I still want to start to attack you, and that's kind of what we saw in game 2. But then we see knight up here to d5, knight down here to d4, so somewhat copying the moves. Both sides have an outpost with their knights in the center of the board, but this opens up the door for just mass exchange on board. So knight takes on f6, bishop here f6, bishop takes, pawn recaptures, and then pawn up here to f4. Magnus Carlsen's completely fine to exchange all material. If he could just draw right now, you have to get to move 30 in this particular tournament. He would. Getting into game number 12 with the white pieces, he kind of has the momentum on his side because he does have that latest victory. He played extremely well. So all in all, with the opening so far, very odd to see Karjakin come out with, in my opinion, a somewhat dull opening that we've seen not too long ago, and knowing that Magnus Carlsen is extremely prepared for this opening. Carlsen responds with pawn to c5, says, okay, if you're going to attack on the king side, I'll go ahead and attack on the queen side. Queen here to g4, getting ready to push forward with pawn to f5, trying to break up this king side of the board as much as possible. Queen down here to d7, just to protect these light squares as much as possible. Pawn up here to f5, does not want to capture yet, decides first to go ahead and bring his rook over here to e8, just loading up the box here, trying to hold down the square here on e6. Bishop here to d2. He had a few options as far as where he could have gone instead of bishop to d2. I probably just would have played bishop to h6. The pawn can't move because it's being pinned down from this queen right here. I think it adds a lot of pressure on his opponent. Could have even just been aggressive with bishop to f4. Really starts to attack a lot of the center of the board. Played, in my opinion, more of the passive wait-and-see bishop to d2. Carlsen pawn here to c4, pawn here to h3, and then Carlsen just kind of pushing, expanding space, doing a good job of playing defensive but improving his position on the board. Pawn takes on c3, and then pawn to d5. He knows that he doesn't have to take material back right away because his opponent can't take here on d4, because then bishop to d4. This is forking the rook here on a1 after check, so we're not going to see that capture. So he kind of has an in-between move, a pawn here to d5, and then after bishop to g5, Carlsen says, hey, that's great. I'll exchange the bishops off the board, and then pawn to e4. After the pawn e6, both sides completely content with just exchanging material off the board. Queen here to e6, and after the pawn takes, Carlsen says, I'm going to give you that pawn and material advantage because I have a pass pawn here on e3, and I'm going to be looking to push that, and you're just going to have to use all your material to kind of hold on to that square right there. So a rook here to e1, pawn here to h6, forcing the queen to move, queen here to h5, and then pushing it to e2. Now, if we kind of look at it, Karjakin has more pawns on board, and he actually has 2 pass pawns, a really good setup. The only problem is he's never going to be able to push these pawns because Magnus Carlsen is putting too much pressure. The pawn here on e2 essentially means that this rook can't really move on board. The queen can't really defend both of these pawns because you could just centralize this black queen right here and then just dance around with your rook. There's no way for Karjakin to really do much on here. He just gave up all his material. Completely okay with Carlsen. Queen over here to f3. Pawn to a5, starting to push a little bit on the queen side. Pawn to c3. A queen down here to a2. Queen c6, and then rook to e6, attacking the queen. And as far as where the queen could go to, decides to go ahead and play queen here to c8. Probably a little bit worse if he did take the material. So let's say queen takes on b5. But then it gets tricky with queen over here to d2, attacking the rook. Essentially, the queen has to come down here to b1. But then after the queen takes on c3, getting ready to take this pawn here on c4. I don't think Magnus Carlsen could potentially win in this position. But it's just... it gives away all the advantage that Karjakin possibly has in the game. So queen up here to c8, king to h7, pawn to c4, queen over here to d2, threatening that rook. Decides, okay, let's go ahead and exchange rooks on board. After queen to e1, check, king here to h2. And then we just see after queen to e4, there is a draw in the game. So 34 moves did kind of seem they were just trying to get to move 30. There's no way to kind of stop this. The white can't let the pawn come down here to e1, get that queen. So essentially, he's just going to be checking perpetually over and over. So at the end of the day, we have a very, very uneventful game number 11. A little disappointed that Karjakin didn't go for the win with some much different opening theory. But all in all, we do have a draw, which makes Game 12, pretty exciting. Magnus Carlsen's got to be feeling pretty good that he has the white pieces with things tied up. So it's in his court now. I don't think he wants to go to a tiebreaker where they start to get into some blitz rapid chess style. There's just too much variance in that. Could easily make a blunder and then lose the world championship. Not how you want to go about it, even though he is a very, very talented fast chess player. So all in all, expecting big things in 2 days from Magnus Carlsen. I do not expect him to come out and play an opening like we did see from Karjakin in game number 11. So thank you guys for watching. Definitely a short video, but it was a short game. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.